That was a pop.
I need to turn it down before I plug it in. Alex West, everybody. You got it? Yeah.
How is that? Good morning, take two. Good morning. Good morning. We are a spiritually alive, radically inclusive, of all events, and justice-centered community. And we are so glad that you are all here. My name is Lori Cross, and I'm your Sunday associate this morning. I'm going to be sharing a few announcements. First of all, the fellowship has been working on a project called Odyssey, featuring the amazing lives of some of the members of this fellowship. Today, the next Odyssey presentation will happen at 1 o'clock with our very own Barbara Nadalny, who will be here shortly, coming around. She's been a member of our fellowship since 1961. So please join us for her story, either live here in the sanctuary or on Zoom. And by the way, there will be lots of food served if you choose to do the marathon and stay until 1 o'clock. Second, next week on Saturday, we're hosting Getting to Know You. From 10 to 2, lunch, of course, included. We're very big on food. Newcomers, new members, and anyone who wants to brush up, understanding who we are, is welcome. We'll be learning about UU history, our fellowship's history and structure, and ways to become involved. Please RSVP by emailing welcome@muuf.org. That's welcome@muuf.org. Third, our collection this morning will be split between the ministries of our fellowship and NORWESCAP. NORWESCAP's comprehensive array of services help people address their immediate needs as well as build resiliency for long-term success. You can give via text, via, again, www.muuf.org, via cash, or check in the basket, which will be coming around later, or you can mail checks to our address at 21 Normandy Heights Road here in Morristown. And in the area of stewardship, we are in the middle of our annual resource drive. So I would like to invite Franklin Heller up to share his story with us now.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. So on Friday, Candace Alison called and asked that I do a testimonial for the resource drive, I think it's called now. So I thought, okay, but I haven't even pledged yet. So right now I am the shoe man without the shoes, but I can tell you why I love the fellowship. One is the Unitarian Universalist values that we share. For generations, my family had a passion for social justice that fits right in with the values we express here. Two is the opportunity to do service. This giving has given me more than I could ever have dreamed of. Most importantly, it has given me a chance to develop deeper relationships with and friendships with many of you. Through this service, we have accomplished many things. I was president when we overcame our neighbors' objections and broke ground on a parking lot. And I continue to be active in the deeper roots, wider wings, and with your support, we are going to build the True Fellowship Hall and the Wilson Erhane Welcome Gallery. This addition will be used not only for the good of this community, but it will be used to drive our social justice initiatives. I also love our minister and everything she has done during her tenure. We are stronger, more resilient, and clearer focused than when she first walked through these doors. And we're poised to do great things here after she takes leave. So, thank you, Alison. And I love you. So I do have a pledge card in my pocket, and I'm pledging today, which puts me, by the way, in a raffle. And if you haven't pledged yet, you get to go into a raffle to win an Apple Watch. I want to thank everyone who has already pledged and ask you to consider a generous pledge if you have not. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Yes, and we haven't even selected the color of that watch yet, so you'll be able to fully choose the watch. And if you're saying to yourself you don't want one, you could say, if I got my pledge card in today, I could give the most fabulous gift to somebody. Let us open our worship by lighting the symbol of our faith. Just a question for any of the children in the room. What is the symbol of our faith? Yes. That's right, the flaming chalice. And we have two up here. We have our chalice for the sanctuary, which actually has the tree of life in it. And then we have our rainbow chalice, which is the chalice we use to help take the light out with our children into their classrooms. Can I get 2 volunteers to light the chalice? Can I get, great, how about 1, 2? That's great. Come forward, yes. Wonderful, wonderful. We're going to light these 2 chalices, and then everybody else in the room, we're going to say these words together. So come, will you guys come here? Each of you has a candle, and you have a candle. Which one do you want? Will you light that one? Okay, good. Come here, and then you can light it. And we will say together the words by James Villa Blake. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Right there and there. Wonderful. Thank you. And then don't forget to blow it out. Perfect. And now, would you all join in a responsive reading? Lori and I are going to read. Lori's words will be the first lines with this side of the room, and then the second lines, we will join them on this side of the room. And it is number 594 in the hymnal, if you can't see up here. And I invite you to join with us. And these are based, I have a big question. What can any child in the room or on the stage answer the question of what is a statement of words that helps define Unitarian Universalist? Does anyone know that? And I'll give you a hint. The answer is up there. Does anyone know what our covenant is called? Yes, 2 for 2, Soren. That's right, the principles and purposes are our covenants. So we have that based on that. So do you want to help me on this side to read? Okay, perfect. I thought you might want to help. Okay, good. So, Lori, will you start us off?
Are we ready on this side? Here we go.
We're the second lines, and we're going to lead them.
We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
This is us. We believe that each and every person is important.
We affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations.
We believe that all people should be treated fairly. Good job.
We affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth.
We believe that our churches are places where all people are accepted and where we keep on learning together.
We affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
We believe that each person must be free to search for what is true and right in life.
We affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process.
We believe that all people should have a voice and a vote about things which concern them.
We affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
We believe that we should work for a peaceful, fair, and free world. Thank you for
We
helping.
affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part.
We believe that we should care for our planet Earth. Wonderful, you can be seated. And let us all rise in body or in spirit, and we shall sing our opening song. Let's see.
Number 10,
Thank you.
Answering the Call of Love.
Great.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
All right. Now the kids come up for a little bit. I want to talk to you about my bag here. All right. Got my phone here, got my notes on it. How we doing? Good, good, good. Excellent. Come on up. All right, so today, Pastor Alison is going to talk about, what did we just read? Who was paying attention before? Not 3 minutes ago. What did we just read? We read about how we help our community. But what did Soren say those things were? Who was paying attention to Soren in the back? Anyone? Or you guys all just colored on your pages? That's fine. Soren, what were we talking about? Our principles and purposes, right? And those guide what we talk about, what we believe as Unitarian Universalists, right? And so they guide us. Some religions have people who guide them, or books, or principles as well, right? Like Buddhists believe in the four noble truths, and Christians believe in Jesus, and Jews believe in the Torah, and we have these principles that kind of guide us. And today, Pastor Alison is going to be talking about the fourth principle. Does anyone know what the fourth principle is? Anyone? All right, you got it? No? All right, David, show off.
Free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
The free, responsible truth for search and for truth and meaning. Sorry, I mumbled it. There we go. Truth and meaning, right? So that's some things we do. So I got this bag here. And how do you think that if this bag represented our beliefs, our truths, how do you think we should hold it? Well, I'll tell you how some people hold it first. All right? I'm going to tell you. Some people, they like to hold it very tight. Sorry, Alex. And not let anyone in, right? Don't let any new things in, new things out, anything like that. Sometimes we might call these people closed-minded, right? And then there's other people, they just kind of like hold their bag like this, and anything can fall out. They can put whatever they want in it. They have no kind of real search for truth or meaning. If someone else believes it sounds good, they read it on the internet, or yes, people just throw stuff in, then that's fine, right? Those people kind of get a little sloppy in their beliefs because they don't hold anything kind of important. Here, put that right in there. Nope, okay, that's fine. But how do you think Unitarian Universalists should hold this bag? Like that? Yeah, nice.
You're holding it so things won't fall out, but things will fall in.
Oh, you're holding it so things won't fall out, but some things will fall in. Yeah, we hold it kind of, right, loosely, but firmly. We pay attention to what's going in, and maybe some things need to come out. Maybe there's some beliefs that don't make sense anymore or need to change, and we can reach in and take it out intentionally, right? This doesn't fall out, right? That's one of the things that's really important about our fourth principle, the search for truth, right? All right, can you put that in there, Kylie? Kira? Sorry, you have your mom's name tag on. Here we go. Can you put that in there? No? Okay, that's fine. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We are going to, and now I need a volunteer to go to our classes. Now listen to me. We are going to go straight up to our classrooms, all right? Teachers, we're going straight up to classrooms. We're not going to gather right in the great hall because we make too much noise for the grown-ups. Can you do me a favor and grab the children's chalice and carefully lead us out as we continue our worship together in our spaces, in our classrooms and stuff, all right? So let's wait for the chalice here, and then we'll go out, and we'll be slung out there. You got it? Good job. No go.
I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
And just a reminder that we are about to have a musical offering and to receive the financial offering, which is going to NORWESCAP, where member Chris Kirk works. And it is an important part of Northern New Jersey's resiliency for families in the area. So thank you for your generosity. And the other half of the collection goes to support the works and ministry of our fellowship. So thank you for supporting our resiliency as well.
As always. The Free Mind by William Ellery Channing. I call that mind free, which masters the senses and which recognizes its own reality and greatness, which passes life not in asking what it shall eat or drink, but in hungering, thirsting, and seeking after righteousness. I call that mind free which jealously guards its intellectual rights and powers, which does not content itself with a passive or hereditary faith, which opens itself to light whensoever it may come, which receives new truth as an angel from heaven. I call that mind free, which is not passively framed by outward circumstances and is not the creature of accidental impulse, which discovers everywhere the radiant signatures of the infinite spirit and in them finds help to its own spiritual enlargement. I call that mind free, which protects itself against the usurpations of society and which does not cower to human opinion, which refuses to be the slave or tool of the many or of the few and guards its empire over itself as nobler than the empire of the world. I call that mind free, which resists the bondage of habit, which does not mechanically copy the past, nor live on its old virtues, but which listens for new and higher monitions of conscience, and rejoices to pour itself forth in fresh and higher exertions. I call that mind free, which sets no bounds to its love, which, wherever they're seen, delights in virtue and sympathizes with suffering, which recognizes in all human beings the image of God and the rights of God's children, and offers itself up a willing sacrifice to the cause of humankind. I call that mind free, which has cast off all fear but that of wrongdoing, and which no menace or peril can enthrall, which is calm in the midst of tumults and possesses itself, though all else be lost.
And I'll share that William Ellery Channing wrote those words in 1830 as part of the May meetings, which was when the Unitarians used to gather for their annual meeting. And a lot of us have looked to Emerson for inspiration. Well, Emerson looked to Reverend William Ellery Channing. It is the time in our service when we honor the milestones that have happened in the lives of our fellow congregants since we last met. And I have 3 to share with you today. The first is a leadership milestone. Today, this afternoon, the torch will be passed from the strategic planning task force that gathered us all in summits and planning groups to articulate a strategic plan that was passed earlier this year. That torch is going to be passed now to the strategic planning implementation group. And so there is a celebration and a meeting today to further that work. And I just wanted to acknowledge the Strategic Planning Task Force, and today in particular, Nan Perigo, for chairing that all throughout the pandemic. When she signed up, she did not know that was part of it. So to Nan, who I just saw very lovingly took a being and took it outside and made sure it didn't get hurt, which is just who she is if you've never met her before, and who has very lovingly tended this process. We are deeply, deeply grateful, and to the entire Strategic Planning Committee. Which also means there'll be many invitations to help make things happen. So if you weren't part of the planning process, never you mind. There's plenty of shaping to be done, and you are all invited. The second is a milestone of gratitude from Donna and Scott Best. A joy of gratitude from Scott and Donna Best. This Mother's Day marks our Jubilee anniversary for attending the fellowship, 25 years together. One of Donna's favorite services, you're going to love this, it's one of your favorites, was Stern's sharing the UU principles as told by the Muppets. Stearns was even talking, there may be another version of that, we'll see. I know, we're talking about maybe something for this summer. Another favorite was every sermon Alison leads. Oh. Thank you very much for being integral parts of our family's spiritual journey. You are both so appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And happy early Mother's Day. And happy 25th anniversary of being here. I love that. And then I received one more milestone by text. Here we go. From Susan Oxman, and this is on behalf of El Bjorg. And it's a milestone of loss. El Bjorg's older sister, Signa, died on Friday. Both her daughters, Vicky and Karen, were with their mother as she passed. Let us hold El Bjorg and their entire family, and may her sister's legacy and the lessons of her life and the love she gave away be remembered. And I invite you to continue in a spirit of prayer and reflective meditation. Spirit of an abundant love, flow in us and through us and among us. On this first day of May, a day of dancing and fires and celebration, a day of feeling our connections to the earth in all her splendor. It is also a day to remember those who labor and toil and work. And today, Wind of the Spirit, one of our partner organizations, is mobilizing to focus on immigrant justice and labor justice. May we be reminded of our kinship and connections to the issues of fair wages, of fair treatment, and of building a world where every human has access to education, shelter, medical care, spiritual care, and well-being from every direction, and where no creature is forgotten to be cared for as well. All these things are our May Day prayers, our meditations, and our hopes. May we be the hands and feet and minds and people who move forward these works of love. Amen, and blessed be, and may it be so. Will you rise in body or in spirit, and let us sing together, Shall We Gather at the River, 1046.
Shall we gather at the river, where bright angel feet have trod, with its crystal tide forever flowing by the throne of God? Yes, we'll gather at the beautiful river, gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. On the margin of the river, washing up its silver spray, ever all the happy golden day. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river, gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. Ere we reach the shining river, lay we every burden down. Grace our spirits will deliver and provide a robe and crown. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river, gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. Soon we'll reach that golden river, soon our pilgrimage will cease, soon our happy hearts will quiver with the melody of peace. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river, gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God, that flows by the throne of God.
An oldie but a goodie. We didn't grow up singing that because it was not in the Gray songbook. I suspect it may have been in the songbook earlier, and then it came back in the teal. Is it teal, turquoise? The one we sing from now. So today's sermon is an invitation to the entire congregation into a conversation that is going on in our denomination and into a reminder of our history, especially with a Getting to Know You class coming up next Saturday. So I hope you know, but did you know that Unitarian Universalism traces its roots in this country back to one of the most conservative Christian traditions in this land? Can anyone share who that is? There are two different names. Does anyone know? Who was the most traditional, stuffy religion that ever walked in New England? There you go, there's a cue. Anyone? The Puritans and the Pilgrims. Believe it or not, Unitarian Universalists trace our lineage back to the Puritans and the Pilgrims. At least that's one of the stories and how the story of Unitarianism and Universalism were born in this country. Now, when you think about Pilgrims and Puritans, the words open-minded, as were offered by Nick earlier, and open-hearted, qualities that we lay claim to, do not come to mind. The Puritans were quite closed-minded, and today what many of us may remember from history class is that they accused a number of women and some people who identified as men of being witches. Why? Simply for being powerful, outspoken, and or for their knowledge of healing, and they executed them in dreadful ways, burning and drowning. I know I vividly remember that part of my history class. It is an amazing story if you think about it, that one of the most radically inclusive religious sects that ever came out of Protestantism, Unitarian Universalism, traces its lineage to one of the most conservative. But our religious history is a story of movement and change, and our future includes many religious shifts to come. One I will share in just a little while. When Lewis B. Fisher, the dean of St. Lawrence, which was founded as a Universalist seminary, was asked what Universalists and religious liberals stand for, he quipped, "The only true answer is that we do not stand at all. We move." Ours is a fluid faith, based on the religious freedom of ordinary people, members, not ministers, to discern what is required to be included in the covenant of the congregation. And here are a couple of kernels that we still hold in common with our forebears, the Puritans, and thankfully it is not trying to restrain outspoken women. One, the Puritans and we viewed the congregation as a voluntary association. People choose to become part of the covenant. Now, the Puritans used coercion and social pressure of severe magnitude, and we don't, but they started with the idea that membership is voluntary. Two, members create a covenant, which contains a set of promises that members adhere to in order to be included fully in the life of the congregation, and that covenant can be changed. Three, members can define and redefine what is required to join a particular community. When the covenant became too difficult for people to subscribe to, the Puritans created something called the halfway covenant. By then, they were really Congregationalists. And four, members have the power to select who is ordained a minister and to elect who serves as their minister by a democratic vote. This means that the membership can elect succeeding ministers who were more progressive in their theological bent, which did happen as Puritans moved towards Orthodox Congregationalists to liberal Congregationalists, or some of you may know them as United Church of Christ, and then to Unitarians. But democratic votes and religious traditions can also lead to the opposite. The Southern Baptists are a very good modern-day example. These ideas of a voluntary association held together by a covenant that can be changed, for a community where the members define what is required to be a member and also have the power to elect their spiritual leaders, has led us to where we are today. These elements are very much still alive in our movement. And I imagine the Puritans are rolling in their graves as we delight at humanists and agnostics and theists of all stripes and people from diverse religious backgrounds enjoying worship together on a Sunday morning. I'm going to add one more thing. The Puritans had something called the Cambridge Platform of 1648, which functioned as a guide for the larger association of independent congregations, just as our congregation has its own mission and covenant, but we also adhere to the 7 principles and 6 sources of the wider Unitarian Universalist Association. The Cambridge Platform and our UUA principles and purposes are documented in our Article 2 of our association bylaws. Both affirm that our communities are autonomous, but that we have a role to play in fellow congregations' lives. We are encouraged to learn from each other, to support one another, and to hold each other accountable from time to time. I believe the Cambridge Platform used the word admonish. The Cambridge Platform also spelled out the ideal of the separation of church and state, which is a steadfast goal and ideal of Unitarian Universalists to this day. We are who we are today because of the merger of 2 liberal Protestant sects, the Universalists and the Unitarians. The Universalists emerged from the Congregationalists, but also from the Baptists and the unchurched. Universalism's story is one connected to persuasive, itinerant preachers who convinced people of God's love and that a loving God would not punish people eternally in the afterlife for finite mistakes in this one, so important. And the backdrop was that there were religious conservatives like Jonathan Edwards preaching fire and brimstone sermons like sinners in the hands of an angry God. So the Universalists were going around the country and preaching the opposite. The example that we often share is of the Reverend John Murray arriving here in New Jersey and preaching a service in the location where our Murray Grove Retreat Center exists today, and essentially founding Universalism in this state. And that kind of story of how Universalism is founded exists all over different parts of the country. By the way, the name Universalism comes from their accusers. They were accused of a heresy of universalism or belief in universal salvation, or the way that we put it today is that our destinies are intertwined. The Unitarians instead grew steadily over time and with great deliberation from vote to vote away from the orthodoxy. Now, orthodoxy means right belief, orthodox, to religious pluralism or heterodoxy that we enjoy today. As we know, there is no longer a creedal test for membership as there once was. It is the covenant which remains, the set of promises that we make about our moral aspirations and our promises for how to treat one another, our neighbors, the wider human family, and all of planet Earth. The Unitarians are also named for the heresy by their accusers. The early Unitarians ceased to be Congregationalists or to become United Church of Christ because we held a belief in the oneness of God, Unitarian as opposed to Trinitarian, which upholds the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Now that we're non-creedal, someone could be Trinitarian and also participate in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, but this is the history of how our names came to be. This very week is the anniversary of a sermon by the Reverend William Ellery Channing, the founding father of Unitarianism in this part of the world. where he reclaimed that accusatory label as his own and preached a message at the time called Unitarian Christianity. Today, many Unitarian Universalists don't identify as Christian, but in 1819, they certainly did. It was at the ordination of the Reverend Jared Sparks in Baltimore on May 5th in 1819. The sermon was an hour and a half long. Reverend Channing often preached an hour to an hour and a half long. Our standards for how long, how much music do you imagine there was, Stearns, in that? Can you imagine an hour and a half long sermon? Unbelievable. But he was a fabulous preacher, I am told. There's no recordings, but I'm confident of it. So it launched a controversy that reverberated from the mid-Atlantic all the way up to New England, where conservative ministers suggested that people should start throwing stones through the windows of Unitarian congregations. And it was a turning point in our faith. And here are some significant moves that he made in that sermon. He asserted reason was the foundation of religion and that we must interpret the scriptures with the aid of reason. Here's some of his writing. If reason be so dreadfully darkened by the fall that its most decisive judgments on religion are unworthy of trust, then Christianity and even natural theology must be abandoned, for the existence and veracity of God and the divine original of Christianity are conclusions of reason and must stand or fall with it. Number 2, he winds up rejecting the Trinity. When Channing reads the scriptures and studies the New Testament, he discovers that there are different interpretations. If you look back at Mark, for example, we often look to on Easter, there isn't a sense that Jesus is part of God. That doesn't happen until later writings, especially in John. And so, in his opinion, Channing talked about the Trinity and the complexity of it as a distraction from communion with God. 3, he rejects predestination and original sin. And this is a big shift in Christianity. And 4th, he acknowledges that there are many different understandings about Jesus in Congregationalist at the time communities, but he asserts that Jesus is fully human. Channing develops in this sermon the understanding that Jesus is a moral exemplar and a prophet, and that God is a loving God, and that we can learn from both how to be loving and move towards greater wisdom. He does not view Jesus as needed for salvation because he rejects original sin. And so then the purpose, and this is another point he makes, is for us to move towards our greater moral capacity and to be in the image of God in that way and to follow in Jesus's footsteps. Channing took moral progress to heart, and he was engaged in many moral movements of his lifetime, and I'll mention 2 of them. He thought it was so horrible and abhorrent that we had debtors' prisons, and he would often give away large sums of his salary to try to get people out of debtors' prison. And he moved towards becoming a very strong voice in the abolition movement as well. Now, I'm going to jump from 1819, 1830 to today, practically, because once again, we are at a crossroads, a turning point for our faith. In 1648, there was the Cambridge Platform. Before the Principles of 1961, when asked about a statement that could indicate something about all Unitarian congregations, people would say the following, written by James Freeman Clarke, a transcendentalist. And he wrote this about Unitarians believe in the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, the leadership of Jesus, salvation by character, and the progress of mankind onward and upward forever. So if you had asked a Unitarian in 1930, that is what they might have told you about what do Unitarian Universalists believe. And most of us, as a whole community, could not say all those words together. So by 1960, there needed to be a shift. And I could talk about any of the 5 of them, but I'll mention this one. The progress of mankind onward and upward forever. Right now, while we are defiling the earth, right now when we are in the middle of war, right now when we know that technology does not necessarily aim towards the moral good unless we're aiming for it, the idea that human beings, as they make progress, always, there's this sort of arc that continues forward without limit towards the good, feels naive. So that would be one example. So in 1961, and I want to invite you, if you could take your hymnal out, and if you could turn to the page right before, and if you're online, you can go to uua.org/beliefs, or you could do that following the service. And you're going to pull up the 7 principles. So right before the first hymn are the 6 sources, and where I'm headed, by the way, is these 6 sources and 7 principles may be entirely rewritten. Entirely rewritten. And I want people to know that, because how many of you feel attached to any of the 7 principles and 6 sources? Yeah. So they may be entirely rewritten. That is what is afoot here. And that's why I'm having you open books and look at these things. So now I want you to look at that page where we, the member congregations of the UUA, covenant to affirm and promote. And I'm going to read the original 6 principles that the Unitarian and Universalists agreed to in merger, and tell me if you notice anything missing. In accordance with these corporate purposes, the members of the Unitarian Universalist Association, dedicated to the principles of a free faith, unite in seeking, so this was 6. 1, to strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of our religious fellowship. 2, to cherish and spread the universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorially summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man. 3, to affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of the democratic method in human relationships. 4, to implement our vision of one world by striving for a world community founded on the ideals of brotherhood, justice, and peace. 5, to serve the needs of member churches and fellowships, to organize new churches and fellowships, and to extend and strengthen liberal religion. And the 6th principle in 1961, to encourage cooperation with men of goodwill in every land. So I wonder, is there anything that changed from 1961 to 1985? Does anyone notice any change? I mean, I see a few changes, but Lori, yes, do you notice a change?
Thankfully, we went from men to person.
Right, that's true. And in fact, most recently in the sources, here where it says words and deeds from prophetic men and women as one of the sources, that was recently changed to people. That just happened, that like a couple years ago. So that's right, we went towards more inclusive language around gender. Does anyone notice anything else? That's right. So, what happened is that we started with 6 principles, and then there were 7 principles and sources, 6 sources. And so God is one of the sources. And you see that number 2, the 2nd principle I read, winds up down in the sources. And world religions gets added down there, for example, and earth-centered spirituality gets added down there, and humanist teachings get clarified. So the sources get clarified beyond Jewish and Christian roots. Anything else? Come on, my Green Earth Ministry folks. Donna. Yes, so big. The seventh principle, absolutely, the seventh principle. Anything else? That's what I was imagining. So that was a big, big shift to add, to promote the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So last summer, we, as a congregation, adopted the new eighth principle here at our June meeting as a part of a growing grassroots movement to acknowledge the legacy of racism and the need to dismantle it and shift from the individualism that ran rampant, I think, in our faith. There was the shadow side of supporting freedom of conscience, the individual search for truth and meaning, but the shadow side is we're also a community, and how do we make choices for the well-being of a whole? So there's a tension between the individual and the community, and we want to live towards the beloved community and make sure that it's not just about individual freedom, it's about collective well-being. And that's a shift that's happening. So the eighth principle talks about those commitments. And I think last June when we passed it, less than 100 had passed. Maybe we were number 70-something, and we're moving towards maybe 200 congregations will have passed it by General Assembly in June. But in our effort to focus on the eighth principle, which reads this, so in addition to the 7 principles, we have this one. We, the member congregations of the UUA, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. So that's been added to the 7 principles before you. But I didn't want you to miss what is happening, because there is an Article 2 commission that has been meeting for a couple of years that will likely be proposing entirely new language for our principles and purposes. It is not just about an eighth principle. It's about a new expression of where we are moving today. It is about the eighth principle in the sense of claiming the need to dismantle racism. Many people talk about the first principle, about affirming and promoting the inherent worth and dignity of every person, every human being. But people of color in our community, indigenous folks, immigrants, many have testified that it's not enough, that we need to have clear focus, especially living in a country and at a time where racism is at the foundation of so many of the anti-oppression efforts we're engaged in. So a need to be clear in our principles has been asked for. A second one is about all beings. There's been a lively conversation about what about the treatment of all beings, especially looking at how many beings are going extinct on a regular basis. And Betsy Burke came up with this as well as others across the country. There's an idea, should we flip the order of things? Should it start with the interdependent web of all existence and maybe end with the individual? But here's the charge to the Article 2 Commission, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I do invite you to look for it online, but I'll read the first paragraph. The Article 2 Commission is hereby charged to review Article 2 of the UUA bylaws and propose any revisions that will enable our UUA, our member congregations, and our covenanted communities to be a relevant and powerful force for spiritual and moral growth, healing, and justice. Proposed changes should articulate core UU theological values. The board believes that one core theological value shared widely among UUs is love. The Commission on Appraisal, in its report Engaging Our Theological Diversity, cites Robert Miller's study of Unitarian Universalism, stating, quote, "UU's ranked loving as an instrumental value and mature love as a terminal value more highly than did respondents from other groups, religious and non-religious." Dr. Cornel West says that justice is what love looks like in public. Our commitment to personal, institutional, and cultural change rooted in anti-oppression, anti-racism, and multiculturalism values and practices is love in action and should be centered in any revision of Article 2. And I'll just scroll down, and it's also supposed to be poetic and concise. So it'll be very interesting to see what gets proposed. But I know people have been hearing about an Article 2 commission, and the moment you hear the words Article 2 commission and bylaws revisions, your eyes glaze over. Sorry, I know I'm saying this in public online and maybe upsetting someone who titled it the Article 2 Commission. But it's really, I think we should call it from now on, the principles and purposes, maybe totally rewriting them commission, because that's what may be happening. And there's going to be a first version that will go to the UUA Board of Trustees in January of 2023. And there'll be a lot happening around this at General Assembly next month, and there may be a first vote in June of 2023 on the new principles and purposes. So you do not want to miss this is happening. And this congregation has a voice and needs to engage in this really important moment. So remember, our principles and purposes, our covenant, is not about where we stand. It's about where we're moving to. It matters that we added the seventh principle and a commitment to the interdependent web of all existence in '85. Who would we be if we hadn't made that commitment? So what then are the set of moral promises that will allow us to thrive into the future and to become a Unitarian Universalism that is religiously diverse, multicultural, multiracial, multigenerational, and a movement for the expression of life and love and liberation? What are the words that will help our spirits move forward towards realizing that dream of the beloved community here and well beyond our walls? So let us move together, and indeed, may it be towards love. So keep tuned and get involved. Let us sing our closing song together.
Kwenkos, sia hambe kukan yen kwenkos, sia hamba kukan yen kwenkos, sia hamba kukan yen kwenkos, sia hamba, hamba sia hamba kukan yen kwenkos, sia hamba kukan yen kwenkos. We are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, marching, we are marching. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching, marching, we are marching. We are marching in the light of God. Caminando en la luz. en la luz de Dios. Caminando en la luz de Dios. Caminando en la luz de Dios. Caminando, vamos caminando. Vamos caminando en la luz de Dios. Caminando, vamos caminando. Caminando en la luz de Dios. Siahamba kukanyen kwenkos. Siahamba kukanyen kwenkos. Siahamba kukanyen kwenkos. Siahamba kukanyen kwenkos. Siahamba, hamba, siahamba. Siahamba kukanyen kwenkos. Siahamba, hamba, siahamba. Hamba, siahamba kukanyen kwenkos.
And now, in our going, may the light of love bless us and keep us. May it shine down upon us. May it radiate out from within us. May it bless us. And may it make of all of us peace builders, liberation devotees. For this, my friends, is the day that you and I are given. So let us sow seeds of justice, love, and gladness in it. Blessed be. Go forth and let us keep moving forward.